What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the WiseTake NFL DFS Wise stream. It is week 15 in the 2020 season. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And I'm joined once again by the GOAT, the true OG, known to y'all as Paulie D. You can find him on Twitter at Paulie with 8 Ds. Paulie and I will not be joined by Patio Joe, who is just worn out from the grind of family life. Load management, yes, in week 15. He's hung in there strong. He really has. Minus the couple Vegas trips every once in a while. But once in a while, you know, that family life, I can imagine, catches up to you. So it'll just be me and Paulie doing dirties for the WiseTake Nation. Paulie, what's happening?
What's up, man? Week 15, huh?
Here we are, week 15. And you know what? I got to say, man, I with NBA starting now, I really, really enjoyed, like, not the circumstances, but I enjoyed the structure. It was nice kind of having football to focus on. Listen, it sucked during the week to kind of have to really, really, you know, like suck all you can out of showdown slates just to kind of, but to be able to focus on football and enjoy it on Sundays, like, you know, and now that we're at the end of football and like things are kind of winding a little bit towards like the finish line, like we got basketball starting up to keep us like fresh. It's like I really did enjoy it, I gotta say.
Me too. I really did. And we had the most successful football season by far. You with your biggest win of your career, and me with like the most consistency I've had in any sport. So I wonder if there's a correlation.
Maybe, or it could just be that we're alphas. Speaking of alphas, if you are a true alpha out there, alpha male, alpha female, I don't care if you're an alpha, hit that like button and subscribe to the WiseTake Nation with the notifications bell turned on so you don't miss out on any of the time we go live. We cover NBA, NFL, we do a lot of free content here. Of course, we have our membership site at WiseTake.com for those who want to contribute to the nation and really be a part of a daily fantasy community. As well as getting guidance, as well as getting the tools we use, the projections we use, cheat sheets, articles, all that good shit. Go check us out at WiseTake.com. More importantly, the Slack chat, which for I know for basketball is even bigger. But for the NFL, man, shout out to all them guys, man. MD Smith, Fritz, Wins, D Millie, like fucking Slack chat warriors. They're in there all throughout the week, like. They do like their own first look conversation. They have like their own midweek conversation, and then they have like they're in there talking it up at the end. Shout out to MG too. But those guys, and I didn't name all of them, and I apologize. Off the top of my head, but they really do like that's what makes this a community, and that's what it's really all about, right? Our goal here as a community is to make you a better DFS player. So make sure you go check us out. And if you play NBA, get ready to rock with us for NBA season because it's hard. Matter of fact, I'm taking shit down right now tonight, son. An NBA preseason. Yeah. So we're getting dirty. You know what I mean? We get dirty on them. All right. Time it's time to dig in, Paulie. We had some pretty interesting news today, so not a ton of time to process things. That's one thing about this NFL season. It's been a little weird with injury news. It's been a lot more basketball-y, where you don't really know what's going on until right before lock, or at least the day of a lot of times. But here we are, and we're gonna do what we do. I'm gonna start off with quarterbacks and ask you flat out: are you paying up for any of these quarterbacks up top?
Yeah, a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't really decided yet how I'm going to approach this, but I feel like, some of the quarterback value, similar to last week, I mean, could be the ticket to kind of getting a better lineup. Like last week, my whole strategy was pay down QB, cheap stacks. I just had the wrong ones. If you ended up on Hurts or Trubisky or Tua, you got there. But I was on Sam Darnold and some other scrubs that didn't do the dirt. But I feel like the quarterback position, like the ceiling is limited, where it's rare that many quarterbacks get over 33, 34 points. You can find a cheapie to get you to 30. You're winning the point per dollar battle, and it's one of the like less less risky. You know what I mean? Like it's less likely to get smoked. Where like a value receiver could go for 40, 45 points if things all go right, and just you're way behind the eight ball. A quarterback, very rarely do they really have massive ceilings. So I do like some value QBs, but some of the studs are in good spots as well. So I'm a little bit torn. I think I'm gonna, as of right now, I plan to either go a little bit of the studs and a little bit of the value and kind of blend it in. But by Sunday, that may change.
I agree. I think this is one of the more like I don't want to say spread out, but the margins were thin, not just based off of matchup but the guys that you want, like Patrick Mahomes, he's expensive, and if you want to take his best players with them, it's really fucking expensive. So like some of those decisions are tough. I do like Patrick Mahomes this week, and I want to find a way to fit him in, but I'm gonna have to be creative in how I do that, and I have to also weigh out ownership to see, is it really even worth it to go through all these hoops? Am I gonna get this situation as low owned as I'm hoping for? Which I think you can. Obviously, there's multiple paths. If you do spend up, Paulie, who are the guys you plan on spending up on?
So I think Lamar is definitely worth a look at 7.5, especially if like Marquise Brown misses. He's, seems to be returning to last year's form. This is a nut spot. They need to win. And, especially if, he's missing his best receiver and really like only receiver, you're going to expect him to do it on the ground. And, the ceiling is just so elevated there. And then obviously Patrick Mahomes, he's pricey, and you got to decide how you want to do that. But I feel like those two, as well as Kyler Murray, who hasn't had a good game in a while, but they have the highest ceilings on the slate. And if you're coming up, I like the idea of those three above 7.
Yeah, I think Patrick Mahomes, obviously, I'm gonna have exposure to that. That's the late night hammer, so to speak. Not late night, but it's the hammer, right? It's the only 425 game. There's only 3 afternoon games. This is on an island at 425. So I'd like to have that window. I want to target this game. It's got a high total. We don't have a ton of those crazy high total million, like fucking 60-point totals like we've had in the past. So I definitely want to get exposure to him. Lamar Jackson, if I think is like on DraftKings anyway, I would look at potentially for cash games just because he's such a big part of that offense and his price is affordable. But for tournaments, I think one of my more like lower owned, I guess, guys I'm looking is the one you had mentioned, Kyler Murray. He projects well for us at the moment, and it makes sense, especially with the Eagles secondary being a little banged up. We'll check the status of Darius Slay as we go on, but I know things weren't looking too great for him at the time. DeAndre Hopkins in a bounce back situation, Kyler Murray, and I think the biggest thing with Kyler Murray, like his decline, I guess you could say, is since he hurt his AC joint. Ever since he hurt his AC joint, you've seen he doesn't want to run, or he's not willing to run as much. But from what I've seen, he's not on the injury report at all for the first time in a while. I'm assuming like just about the timeline of when he got the injury, this is about the time he should start to feel better, as long as he's protected it, which I think he has. So I do think we will see Kyler Murray do some dirties And at 7K, I think we're getting a deal, man. This is a guy that showed us a pretty solid ceiling. 7K is a pretty good fucking deal. What about the mid tier?
So I actually really like Deshaun Watson. In my opinion, he's a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. And, because Houston looked so bad last week against Chicago, everyone's kind of writing them off because, Indy's home, the better team than Chicago. But, I really think that Deshaun Watson is going to come in very low owned and has as high a ceiling as anyone. And, 6'8" is a lot more feasible than 7'5" or 7'9" for Mahomes. And his receivers are really cheap. I think Houston hangs in this game against Indy. It's on turf. I think it's very high scoring, and I do really like Deshaun here at low ownership. Sneaky sneak. After that, Jalen Hurts against Arizona. I just like that game. Both teams are going to play fast. Jalen Hurts is just um, a weapon. Like we saw what Taysom Hill, we saw Kyler, like these running quarterbacks just, their floors are so high. And, the way Arizona plays so fast, he's going to get that many more extra plays. It's just, he could really post a big score. But that's probably it in the mid tier. Like for the most part, I really want to go all the way up, all the way down. And Deshaun, I really kind of considered all the way up. Just, he was 200 under that 7K. And I guess same price as Hurts, Drew Brees. We haven't seen him put up many big games lately, but he's at home in the dome against Kansas City. You know, this game could go to the moon, and he could accumulate so many stats just dumping off to Kamara and Kamara going nuts. So I think I just love that game, so I want to have both sides of it. And the Drew Brees stack is way more manageable than the Mahomes way.
I honestly I've been kind of just kind of glancing over Watson, thinking about it leaving, and for some reason when you started talking about him, it kind of just clicked in. Like he's projecting to be pretty low owned. Last week he was pretty popular, and his offense sucked. A lot of people went to him against the Bears, who I understand Bears are underrated. He was also missing Brandon Cooks after already losing Will Fuller. So it was kind of listen, not to make excuses for the guy, but it was kind of a tough situation, going into that environment. The Colts defense, I think, if anything, if there's a defense that's overrated in football, I kind of think it's the Colts defense. I know they've had some decent games against bad teams, but anytime they played a good team, mind you, like we're not talking about takeaways and things like that. Yeah, they can get those, but we've seen teams move the ball on them. I mean, look what the Raiders did to them. I mean, listen, that's not a knock on the Raiders, but these are all NFL teams, and Deshaun Watson is one of the best quarterbacks, at least for fantasy purposes, in the league. It is interesting to me, man. Like I think there's a lot of ownership going to the other side. Doesn't seem to be a ton coming here, right? Like we'll talk about Hilton, we'll talk about Taylor, who are both projected to be somewhat owned, but not a lot of people talking about this side of it. Watson put up 24 at home against these guys with the same crew. That was when Kuti went off that day, and he was 7-5. And now his price is down on DraftKings to 6-8. Now on FanDuel at 8-1, different conversation, right? He's not that cheap. You can get Kyler Murray for $100 less. You can get for another $100 get Lamar Jackson. But on DraftKings, you're saving not necessarily from Kyler Murray, but from Lamar and from Mahomes. You are getting a pretty good savings. So yeah, I actually think that's an interesting approach for sure, and something to consider. Other than that, I think that you got like your leverage-ish plays. You got Ryan Tannehill, right? The Henry situation, right? If they go nuts and Henry don't do it, it must have been Tannehill. That mentality. You got Tom Brady against Atlanta, right? Well, they're a pass funnel. Atlanta's they're still number one in DVP in terms of fantasy points allowed to opposing quarterbacks. That's how bad they were at the beginning of the season, even though they've been better lately. And then Jared Goff against the Jets, the worst secondary in the league. And that's just some of them. So I do think the mid-tier is deep, but they don't separate a ton. But I think I may open up more on the mid-tier and get more into these guys. But I don't know. It's just every time I think about it, I'm like, maybe Watson's only a few $100s more. Or Kyler Murray is just a few $100s more than Watson. So I find myself kind of leaning up or leaning down. But I do respect the mid-tier that we see here. Like, I do respect it. What about Value Town?
Man. So as much as I hate to say it, Mitch Trubisky's in play. The Vikings are, good against the run, bad against the pass, and you know, this could be another Trubisky spot. And the cheap price, really helps you out. Um, I think Andy Dalton is viable at home against San Francisco. San Francisco, another team really good against the run, can be beat against the pass, and Dalton and Co. Dalton's 5'4". His receivers really not that expensive. I think that's in play. And then Gardner Minshew against Baltimore. Like we just saw the Browns, who are certainly much better than Jacksonville, but kind of exposed Baltimore's defense. And Minshew has the rushing upside. He's got some weapons at receiver, mostly DJ Chark. And again, it allows you to kind of load up the rest of your lineup. So those are some of the value guys that I got my eye on. And I've played them the last 3 weeks. I can't not going to play some Sam Darnold with cheap receivers once again and hope that he has his blow up game. Because Sam Darnold, and I feel so bad for that guy. Like, you put him on the Rams, and I think he'd be doing just the same as Jared Goff right now. But he's not. He's on the Jets, and it's been miserable. But he's going to connect with his receivers deep. They're going to be trailing. That could work out as well. And he's really cheap, and so are his receivers.
That's a tough one. But I get it, man. You have played Sam Darnold a couple times. I mean, it's a shame, man. Like this is Adam Gase. You can also blame Joe Douglas, but he was doing this to rebuild. He's trying to make this his team. But last year, Sam Darnold had a handful of games where he showed some serious upside. He has not really had one this year. That's progression, and then and that's again. I understand he doesn't have a ton of talent around him as far as the weapons go, receivers, but. Mekhi Becton was a pretty big upgrade to the line in general. And it's just a shame. As a Jeff fan, true shame. I feel bad for him too. Do I want Trevor Lawrence? Yes. But it's not because I don't like Darnold. It's because I think that Darnold has kind of been broken by us and he kind of needs a fresh start with another organization. But I do think he will be a decent quarterback somewhere else. That being said, I think the only real pay down that I would consider, and it's tough to say because pay down quarterback, the idea of it is attractive. We do have a lot of expensive guys that we want to play this week, but I think Drew Brees would make the most sense. I don't know if I come to a ton of him, but I really like Kamara, who we'll talk about at running back, right? Like 5,900.
Losing Mike Thomas really hurts.
That hurts. It hurts like dicks. It does. However, he is at home. The only place we'll take him. Right? If he's coming back, I'm thinking he must really feel good. Like, I don't think Drew Brees is rushing to come back if he's not feeling good. He's at home. Like, the vibe I get is maybe he could have even came back last week if his team needed it. That's the vibe I'm getting. So, I'll take some shots at Drew Brees to help me get other pieces of that Chiefs game. But the mid tier is pretty strong, and then the Watson thing you pulled out was definitely something to consider, and I do like the spend up option. So I don't know, as much as I want to build Wise to come down here, I don't know how often I do in tournaments. The one other guy, I guess we can consider him a pay down, but Jalen Hurts, 5'9". I don't mind Jalen Hurts if you want to take some shots. I do think Philly's gonna move the ball. It's either gonna be him or it's gonna be Sanders, but one of them dudes is gonna run that ball. And so I'm okay with him. And if I play Hurts, I'm likely to play him naked. And I want him for the run game. I'll at your boy. Street mode. Running backs, up top, what are you doing with Big Dog?
I'm certainly going to have some. I'm not positive what he's projected on ownership-wise. I'll guess like mid-20s, and I feel like I'll be at or under the field. I don't think I get over 9.5 is like a brutal price tag for Henry. Like, yes, he can certainly rush for 200 and a bunch of touchdowns, especially against Jacksonville. But I just like it really hampers the rest of your team. And like, he got 36 last week in just an absolute massive game. That's not even 4x at this price. And that was like a massive, massive ceiling. So, I mean, going against the Lions, I'm sorry, last week was Jacksonville, but I don't know. I'll have some, just in case like last week. But I honestly think that I plan to be underweight because it hampers the rest of your lineup.
Well, I'll touch on Henry and then I'll let you continue to the guys who aren't interested in up here. But I agree. I think overall he's just so expensive. The matchup's phenomenal. I don't know. Fritz is going to be upset. In a cash game scenario, I'll just lock it in because I think that it's guaranteed 30. Right? I'll take it and look at it as a 30 and move on. But like you said, 30 is not necessarily good enough. In tournaments at 9.5, you would really need him to go for one of his 50 burgers, which he can certainly do here. But there's also, especially with Chase Sanders, with Matt Stafford potentially missing, there's also the possibility that things get a little ugly a little quickly, and they don't use Henry. They use the other guy. What's his name? Foreman. The backup, I forget his name. So it's a possibility. I'm just kind of making shit to make myself feel better. It never feels good saying, like, I'm going to be underweight on fucking Derrick Henry in a smash spot late in the season when he always does his thing. But I agree with Paulie in that it really, really, like, dampers the lineups. And we have the Kamara thing opening up, which I'm going to ask you about in a second. We have other options. Jonathan Taylor. Like, we do have other guys we can consider. Maybe not as good as Big Dog. I admit that. But we also have a lot of good receivers. And receiving is kind of the same thing. I'm not too crazy about the guys in that 5-something range outside of, like, 1 or 2 people. I kind of like the guys up top. So decisions have to be made, and they're tough. But I plan on going underweight in tournaments as of now. If any updates, be in the article.
I will say, I like him more on FanDuel.
Yes,
but I'm predominantly DraftKings, where like.
That's a great point. He's more expensive over there, but he can separate a lot further over there. Because in DraftKings, one of these guys might make up some of that point, with some of that difference point per dollar wise through targets. On FanDuel, you need the touchdowns, and Henry's getting the touchdowns. So I agree. I like him a lot more on FanDuel. All right, Paulie, what guys are you considering spending up at?
So, Dalvin Cook, like, really interests me. The Bears have, gone downhill against the run in recent weeks. Some of that's due to injuries. And, Minnesota, wants to win this game. He's, like, I don't love his price and the spot that much, but how low owned I expect him to be. Like, I think he's going to come in around 5%. Just makes it worth getting exposure to. Like, you can get 15%, be double, triple the field, and people perceive the Bears' run D to be like top 5, top 10, then not, and especially not lately. And if Minnesota can get it going on the ground, they'll keep doing it. So I think Cook is interesting. And then we have like a major price drop down to Kamara at 7.4, who I do like a ton. Mike Thomas being ruled out pretty much guarantees a minimum of 10 targets, I would say. They, whether they're leading, it's most likely because Kamara did a bunch of it, or likely trailing and doing a ton of dump offs with Drew Brees' noodle arm. With no Mike Thomas, the volume floor is just so high at 7.4. I like him a ton. I know he's going to be popular, but it's like if you're choosing between the two evils of Henry or Kamara, like I'll take Kamara for 2,100 less, and I think he's going to outscore Henry raw points anyway. That's kind of it though, down to 7 for me.
Yeah, we'll make the cutoff Kamara because it is kind of like in its own island. I completely agree. I mean, Cook isn't interesting, but I have the same problem with Cook that I have with Henry. It's reaching him. Kamara, the price difference, the significant savings, and like the boost in matchup. Like Kansas City, first of all, has been vulnerable against the run. Second of all, Drew Brees, Kamara was playing at ridiculous levels at the beginning of the season. When we were in this exact situation, Drew Brees was quarterback, Michael Thomas was out. His price at that point was like what, 8-7 most weeks? Like it was something ridiculous. And now we're getting an opportunity to play him at 7,800 on FanDuel and 7,400 on DraftKings. I just like that's one I can't get by. I know he may be popular, I know, but I don't think he'll be as popular as he should be because there is going to be some people that do want to play Derrick Henry, that do want to play guys like Jonathan Taylor, and you can't play them all this week. I don't think anyway, unless there's massive punts that people are willing to take. But yeah, Kamara, I mean, I don't see how I get around that. I'll use the cutoff as the spend up there for me. I'm going to kick it back to you for the mid-tier, but I'm with you on Kamara. I just don't see how you get around it.
Okay. So, mid-tier, like, even though I went down to 7, like, Jonathan Taylor's projection to be somewhat popular. 7.2, for me, is just a no-go. Like, it's too close to Kamara. I'm picking Kamara every time, and the money's just too important on this slate. Like every savings you can get is worth it, and I just think like I don't want to play him at a ceiling price at ceiling ownership when they do spread the ball around. We don't know what the game flow is going to be like here, and I know Houston's been bad against the run, but there's just too many like variables at that price that like I don't think he's a guy that's going to go for 30 or more many times in this spot at 7-2. That's really like what you're looking for. I'm off of that. But Miles Sanders, I do have interest in. It's like I like Jalen Hurts. I also like Miles Sanders. I think you could even pair them. The pace that Arizona plays, Philly was, sped up last week with Hurts. This game is projecting to be very fast, many extra plays. Sanders looking, healthy and strong again. And, I think Philly, if they can, will, try to control the ball on the ground. And if they fall behind, that could change. But they'll use Sanders through the air as well. I really like Miles Sanders at 6'9". I don't mind Chris Carson. I expect the Seahawks to be fine offensively, and if they can run, they will. And Washington's a tough defense. I certainly think they can be run on, and I like Carson's involvement in the pass game as well. After that, it gets kind of ugly. I know Cam Akers is projecting popular. Like if he was going to be loaned, I could dig that. It's kind of similar to my feelings on Taylor, where like now the price is elevated and he's going to be popular, and the Jets are actually good against the run. Not that he can't get a couple touchdowns and some yardage, but they also, spread the ball around. They could get up by a lot, and like him just not get enough run to really hit a ceiling. So I'm not really on that. J.K. Dobbins would be the next guy. Jacksonville terrible against the run also, and if they get up, they're just going to run the shit out of the ball. I'll cut it there. But really, in that mid-tier, Sanders, Dobbins, and then a little bit of Carson for me.
Yeah, I think Taylor for me I would use only in like game stack situations. Like if I was playing the Deshaun Watson, I don't mind using Taylor and Hilton to like as like bringbacks in that situation. I agree with the price. I actually think James Robinson is kind of interesting. I know that Baltimore is expected to win this game by a lot, but you still got to think Robinson's going to get a ton of work. There's nothing that tells us he's not going to continue to get the volume he's gotten. And Baltimore, we saw what Cleveland was able to do, not to make comparisons, but we're talking about running backs that both did well, splitting carries. And then you got one running back who's going to get all of it. You got to think he could at least equate to the fantasy points of one of those guys, on like a worse team. And this is a sort of a letdown spot for Baltimore if you think about it, right? Like they went, did the unthinkable, Superman came out, whatever. But when you think about Baltimore's team, number one, as you mentioned, Paulie, they have been dealing with nagging injuries. Calais Campbell's been playing through an injury. Their secondary's a little beat up right now. They're like, right? They got Humphreys is holding everything together. Marcus Peters, is holding things together, but we've kind of seen them vulnerable. So I wouldn't be surprised if in general, being that I don't know when the last time they've all practiced together. This COVID thing, ever since that happened, you've had guys not practice and then have to play or miss weeks on end. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Jacksonville with Minshew back there hang around this one a little bit. And I think if they do, Robinson has to play a part in that. Like you said, Miles Sanders, I like him as a bring back in Kyler Murray stacks, and I think he's a fine tournament play as well. Arizona plays at a very fast pace, and we know that Philly's becoming very run heavy, and they got a little thing going on with him and Hurts. I like it. I can dig it. Cam Akers, I'm okay with. I know Joe wasn't really big on him either. We talked about that earlier. I understand it. I feel like I want something from the Rams, and I prefer Cooper Kupp or something like that. But if I don't have any receivers because they're being used for whoever my quarterback is and the correlation, I feel like maybe I do want a piece of Akers a little bit just to have something against the Jets. But I do agree that really what you want against the Jets are receivers or tight ends or somebody that's going to catch the ball because that's really where they're the worst. I'll cut it there. One last guy, I guess. DeAndre Swift, I don't mind, right? I mean, could see him get some heavy usage. If Stafford was there, I'd feel confident that he would get targets. But I would assume that we're going to see checkdowns from this guy too. So I don't mind Swift. It's more of a usage thing. A snap thing. They've been playing the 3 running backs: Kerryon Johnson, Peterson, all that good shit. What about pay down running backs, man? Some interesting ones here.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So Leonard Fournette, 4-5. I think he's going to be incredibly popular. I get it. We like running backs that get thrown to against Atlanta. He, kind of, had that role, lost that role, but without Rojo there, he's the lead back, and um, you know, at 4-5, he just doesn't have to do that much to really pay off, and the ceiling's massive if he gets in the box a couple times. And the 4 or 5 price tag is just so helpful to the rest of your lineup. Um, but everyone knows that play. That's nothing new. The guy that I really like down here is Raheem Mostert. Right, Dallas is just terrible against the run. Um, I would imagine that he's as close to beginning of the season form as he's been since recovering from a minor injury. Getting work through the air, work through the ground. I think he breaks a couple big ones. I really like him at super low ownership to have like a smash game. And we know the 49ers do most of their scoring on the ground. And if not him, then Jeff Wilson for 5-1 is also in play. Kind of like becoming a split situation there with Wilson getting 11 carries last week, found the end zone. Also got 3 targets, but I prefer Mostert, but both of them are options. That Dallas run defense is god awful. Uh, I think Latavius Murray is worth some exposure now that Mike Thomas is out at 4-7. You really can run on the Chiefs, and the Saints are one of the better run blocking offensive lines. And with Mike Thomas out, that's just like a large chunk of the market share that's got to go somewhere. And I think they're going to want to run with Breeze back. You could see Latavius Murray not even having a big day on the ground, but having 2 rushing touchdowns in a super high scoring game at 4-7 at low ownership. That's worth getting some exposure to as well. That's really it down here, though. I think McKissick's in play. I think the Haskins situation is not great for him, but they're still going to need to check down. He's still going to get the volume, I would assume, at least similar. They should be trailing, so the target share is up there. But his price is crept up to where it's like, but he's worth mentioning down here. That's like it for me, though. I don't really see anyone else that I would have more than 5% exposure to.
So I'm with you on the Niners running back situation. I want one of them. I don't know which one though. That's the problem. And I don't think anyone does. I think they're going to somewhat split the carries down the middle. We know Mostert is the one that's going to get any kind of pass game work over Wilson most likely. But we also expect. I mean, I expect Minnesota to be able to move the ball fairly easily on the ground, through the air, whatever they choose to do, because it's Dallas's fucking defense. So that's a decision that's going to be tough. MMEs is the best way to play those guys because you just fucking get some decent exposure with them both. You can obviously lean towards one more than the other. Kenyon Drake's kind of interesting if Edmonds gets ruled out. He's currently questionable. They're saying that he's heading towards a game time decision. They may let us know tomorrow if he tests it out, or Saturday if he tests it out. But we don't know for sure. If he gets ruled out, I think Drake will get somewhat popular. It's not the greatest matchup, though Philly has been giving it up a little bit on the ground recently. So I'll just mention his name. The last guy, so there's obviously guys we can work in. You covered a lot of them. I think J.K. Dobbins is worth mentioning against Jacksonville. If Lamar Jackson doesn't do dirty against Jacksonville, you would think it's because the running game did. And right now, Gus Edwards and this guy Dobbins seem to have a pretty good stranglehold of the position over Ingram. The last guy probably that I don't think you touched on him. Maybe you did, and I just wasn't paying attention. But Leonard Fournette, right? We got Rojo. Oh, you did? Fuck. Damn.
I said he's going to be the chalkiest running back on the slate.
Where are you at with him going into the week?
I mean, 4-5. we need the value. And, even though Atlanta's really good against the run, they're not good at running backs in the pass game. Fournette's going to have that as well. At 4.5, 4 catches for 40 yards and 40 yards rushing, he's at 3x. And that's without any touchdowns. He really helps get you some of the things you really want on this slate. It's hard to overlook him. Him and one of the San Fran running backs are very likely going to be in my top, 3 highest owned running backs.
I agree. They were both in a lot of my builds. Now I'll disclose that with this. I think Fournette is a much better DraftKings play. Right?
Yes.
FanDuel, we're relying on touchdowns. I don't think he's in the greatest spot for touchdowns. That's not guaranteed, right? This is a really good spot for the pass game, and we have a good quarterback in Tom Brady with a shit ton of weapons. To be clear, for those who play FanDuel, I know a lot of our members like Fritz and these guys have been talking in the chat, D. Millie, talking about oh, I'm not playing Uncle Lenny. On FanDuel, they're probably right. That's flat out it. But I think on DraftKings, like you said, Paulie, the PPR potential, I know they say that LaShawn McCoy is going to be the third down back. I think that Leonard Fournette is more likely to see targets than LaShawn McCoy. And I do think that Fournette will be the 1 and 2 downs running back. 4,500 on DraftKings against a team that gives up a lot of pass receptions to running backs. It's just hard to get around. So on DraftKings, yes. On FanDuel, I'm probably no. That's where I'm sitting. We'll move it over to the wide receiver position. Oh, one other thing. Keep an eye on Tony Pollard. Ezekiel Elliott, as usual, is questionable. So you can play that game if you want to. Hard and long. All right. Wide receivers, spend ups. What do you got?
Yeah, so, part of the reason guys like Fournette and the cheap 49ers is, the spend-up receivers have been good all season long, and we are not short on those on this slate again. So Tyreek Hill, I think is in a phenomenal spot. The only concern is does he get enough, or do they just spread it around? DK Metcalf is always in play, pricey, but going to be very, very low owned, I would assume. Calvin Ridley with no Julio against Tampa, that's a good spot. I really like DeAndre Hopkins this week against Philly. Don't mind AJ Brown, don't mind Allen Robinson, love Justin Jefferson, any of the Rams receivers. So 7K and up, I like them all. But if I had to rank a top 3 right now, I would say Hopkins, Hill, Ridley.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill is awfully tough to pass on. Marshall Lattimore, as good as everybody believes him to be, this year he's getting destroyed with deep balls, and that's what Tyreek Hill does, man. His speed is just tremendous. He's going to be in the dome, on the turf, very hard. As far as spend ups go, Tyreek Hill is by far my favorite. DK Metcalf, from an ownership perspective, is kind of sneaky, right? You could see Metcalf not really being owned. We've seen number 1 receivers rip up Washington, and Metcalf had some ownership by me last week. Didn't get there because his team just didn't push it. But I think this game is going to be competitive, Seattle-Washington. Washington's defense is no joke. And I can see Russ really leaning on Metcalf heavily. And like I said, we have seen Washington struggle against number 1 receivers. DeAndre Hopkins, I'll come here as the last one. I know he's 7'9", but I'll just mention him. Do like Hopkins, but I really like him with Murray, just to be clear. So I like Hopkins, but I like him with Murray. Paulie, kicking it back to you for some mid-tier action.
Yep. So, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, I like them naked without Goff. I just, I don't see this game, pushing them to their ceiling. If it does, that means the Jets showed up, and then I would have wanted the Darnold and cheap Jet receiver stack. So I don't really see ever using Goff, but one of these 2 receivers, it's the best matchup in football right now, receivers against the Jets. Terry McLaurin against Seattle. He hasn't had a good game in a while, but that's just variance. Getting Haskins back, which may be a plus for him. And Seattle's just been terrible against receivers all year. I really like this as a good bounce back spot for him. I like all the Tampa receivers. I think you always want to go Mike Evans first, especially on FanDuel. He's just the most likely to get targeted in the red zone. But I feel like Chris Godwin is so overdue for a smash game. Like last year, Chris Godwin had like 3 or 4 games, 30 plus, and he just hasn't had that yet. This year he's dealt with some injuries, but this could certainly be the spot where that happens. Um, I like Brandon Cooks. Didn't play last week. Don't think many people are going to be on him. And if Deshaun Watson has that good day, like it's just likely that Brandon Cooks and Kute are part of that. If Marquise Brown plays, I really like him too. I think he'll be like 1% and could absolutely smash against the Jags. Um, you know, he's finally been finding the end zone a little bit lately. Just it hasn't like it hasn't been on like heavy volume, but he's gonna get 5, 6 plus targets, and he's so due for those 120-yard, 2 touchdown kind of blow up, and Jacksonville's the team to certainly um, let that there's a couple more down here in the cheap sector. That helps. All right. Also, Brandon Ayuk against Dallas. This guy's just like either scores a touchdown or gets 100 plus yards receiving. Um, I believe what his name is out to the other receiver.
Yeah, Debo.
So number one guy got 16 targets last week. Only 9 the week before that, then 14 and 11. Like, hard to ignore that type of volume against just a terrible defense. Kiki Kute at 5'3", if not Cooks, then him. And DJ Chark, getting his QB back. It's been a while since he's had a blow-up game, but at 5K, another one who last year had 3 or 4 games with 30 or more, and getting Minshew back definitely is a plus for him. So DJ Chark, I also really like the value.
Yeah, I'm on the Chark train too. The targets have been there, and Minshew is the one he's kind of connected with like his entire career. So yeah, I like that. Definitely, especially like if I end up playing Lamar, like a Lamar, which I do think that's heavily on the table, right? Lamar, Andrews, Brown, something like that. My easy bringbacks, James Robinson, and Chark to me, like perfect little game stack. And I do want to use correlation more than usual this week because there's not a lot of high total games, as we mentioned, right? Most of the higher total games are either on Saturday or have already passed us on Thursday. But we got 48.5, 46, 45, 43.5, 41.5. 48, which is this Baltimore game, 51.5, 51, 49.5. But like, and there's the highest on the highest is 52. So we've had slates where we've seen like 55, 53, and there were a handful of games. I don't know if it's as like direct there. So I do want to use correlation. And I think that, Chark and Robinson make for an interesting one with Lamar Jackson builds. Receivers loaded, right? Like Price is everything this week, but it is loaded. You mentioned all the Tampa guys, the fucking Woods and Cup. They're both in such phenomenal spots. I wish the Jets were any good offensively because you could just Goff take whatever receivers and just fly off. It's just the Jets are just so nasty. Brandon Ayuk, the price I'm not crazy about, but the matchup is just awesome, and the usage he's gotten, he's really stepped it up. Brandon Cooks, really don't think anyone's going to play Cooks. He was pretty popular when in that first game without what's his name against in the same matchup. He was pretty popular, and it didn't work out. Kuti ended up balling out, but I don't see why Cooks couldn't do it this time around. He's only 6K. There's just a lot to like in this range. T.Y. Hilton, I expect to be pretty popular. I'll share what I shared with you. I'm not super big on Hilton. Again, I'm using correlation, so if I play Hilton, it's most likely going to be in a situation where I'm stacking that game somehow. I'll say this. It's just a weird fact. I don't know if there's any reason for it. Hilton has a decent sample size against Houston. We all know he has always, over his career, played better at home. We also know over the course of his career, he's always thrashed Houston, including this year. However, ironically, there were some interesting splits with Hilton in Houston and Hilton at home. I know that goes against everything. Hilton's always known as the only play-at-home guy, but For whatever reason, his numbers double when he plays Houston in Houston. Still good numbers at home against Houston, but the numbers almost double when he plays them in Houston. I think that could be just game script kind of shit. His team's more likely to be trailing on the road. I don't know. It's just sharing that with you. But yeah, Hilton, I'm going to treat more like I would play him in cash, I think, if the ownership's going to catch up to him. But for me, Hilton is more of a correlation play if I'm in that game, which is really what I'm going to use for receivers. Receiver is so loaded that I have to use correlation. Like, how do you get to Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen, who are in sneaky good matchups? Buster Screen is out, the slot receiver, slot corner for the Bears, who I've heard people talk down on him. I think he's one of the better slot receivers in the league. There's not a ton of great slot receivers out there, right? Like, I mean, how many teams do we come across in the NFL and we're like, well, yeah, you can take the slot against them? A lot of them. And I don't think he's so bad. Him being out, I think, is going to be kind of a difference maker. So we didn't really talk much about Cousins or Jefferson or Thielen. But again, how do I get there against the Bears? It's not going to be by random. It's going to be because I chose to attack that game. And I think that's how I'm approaching receivers pretty much most weeks, but especially this week, where I really want to take advantage of correlation. What about like super value, man? We have some things opening up. There's a couple guys that got on my radar. A couple guys we lost because of news. What are you thinking?
There's like 6 guys that I really got my eye on. Right, it's the 2 dudes in New Orleans. Traquan Smith and Emmanuel Sanders. Traquan's 3-2. Eman Sanders 4-2. No Mike Thomas. They should be trailing. Um, the Jets receivers, Denzel Mims is back, and Perriman. Um, Richie James with no Debo at 3-6. We've already seen him have a blow up game, and I think he's like one of those athletic playmakers that when he gets the reps, he does make plays. Jalen Rager, he's the Philadelphia guy. I would pair with Hurts. I think he's a guy that's capable of having blow up plays, and they drafted him to use him, and he's been targeted ever since he's returned from injury. Michael Pittman Jr., with everyone going to Hilton, I think he's an interesting play as like a pivot off in a game that I think is going to be high scoring and competitive. And Christian Kirk, I really middle of the season, he had, like a 4-game stretch of just like, 2 touchdowns or over 100 yards. And, we really like the number 2 and 3 receivers against Philly. And he definitely makes stacking with Murray in that game just a little bit easier, and going to be so low with such a high ceiling. I also like Christian Kirk. Those are the like upper echelon of the value guys that I got my eye on.
Yeah, man, I like Christian Kirk. I'll probably use him more as like the third option in my Murray stacks, but I like him. Another guy I like is Michael Gallup. Now, I like the Niners defense this week, but I'm okay taking like one guy against. I'm not going to let that take me off. If defense is scoring points, they can afford to give up a couple points. But the reason I like Gallup is we know he's been kind of relegated as Dalton's deep throw guy. I do think Dalton's more likely to take those chances being and more comfortable being that he's at home in the stadium he plays in. And that's actually been a big vulnerability for the 49ers defense this year is actually the deep ball. So I actually think at 3,500 we have a little bit of upside here for Gallup, who's getting opportunities, right? He just hasn't always converted with those opportunities, but 3,500 for Gallup. He would be another guy on my radar. And like you said, man, the Emmanuel Sanders, Traquan Smith thing, that's like a pretty big emphasis on this slate. I think Eman Sand will be popular and for good reason. But don't forget about Traquan Smith. That's all I'm saying. He's cheaper. Brees has thrown him like big boy touchdown passes, downfield stuff over Traquan's career. So I'll leave it at that. But definitely guys to consider this week for sure. Moving over to tight ends, Paulie, what are you spending up for Kelsey or what? He's on a planet of his own.
On it. No, not much. It's burned me like multiple weeks in a row. I really haven't had enough Kelsey, but 8K now, like similar to the Derrick Henry thing. It just like it really, really hampers the rest of your lineup, and like he's got such a high floor, but is a 30 really going to be good enough at 8K on this slate? I just don't think so. Like Hill's the one who can go for like the 40 pluses and set you apart. And if I'm gonna go to Mahomes, I'm more likely to go to Hill than Kelsey especially in this matchup. So he's probably like a 10% or less guy for me though. It's mostly pay down because I need the money.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I'm torn, man. Like I do like have some pay down guys that I'm gonna have more exposure to, but I will make sure to get some Kelsey in my tournament teams. I also like Mark Andrews. I know I'll kind of lead you into this segment. I also like Mark Andrews in this little area, right? It's decent, but I'll use Kelsey in correlation teams where it fits, where it works. Talk to me about the next guy down, Mark Andrews, and the rest of tight end.
Definitely like Mark Andrews. If Marquise Brown's out, that would even make it even more attractive to me. Um, you know, really got nothing negative to say to him, regardless of Brown. So definitely like him. And then it's as cheap as I can get. Like I like Dallas Goedert. He's another guy I would consider pairing with Jalen Hurts. Cole Kmet just hasn't let me down in like 3 weeks. Even if he doesn't get the touchdown, now the targets are all the way up. He's pretty much taking control of that tight end role on the Bears. Um, Jared Cook, I think, is an interesting, really contrarian with Mike Thomas out kind of option for the Saints. Dalton Schultz has like phenomenal peripheral, receiver stats, and think he's not bad at 3-2. Um, Jordan Akins, Houston at 2-8, I think is fine. I don't mind that. And then Hayden Hurst, like the guy just keeps killing me, but 3-3, he's gonna have a blow up game. Like I don't understand how he's done so poorly, but I think he's due for a decent game. Those are the guys I mostly play down low.
Yeah, I mean, Cole Kmet certainly stands out. His role is increasing. I'm not a Trubisky guy at all, but I do like this Cole Kmet kid, and they're incorporating him more and more. He's really taking that role over from Graham. He's playing just as much as Graham, and I think he's going to end up playing more than Graham. I start at the bottom because now we're here. Started from the bottom. Now the whole team's here. Going up, Dallas Goedert, I don't mind. We know Ertz is around. I don't mind Ertz either. Not the greatest matchup. Arizona's actually been really good against tight ends, but we know how involved they are on the offenses. Rob Gronkowski, man, Atlanta tight ends against Atlanta has kind of burned me ever since I came through for me with the Tanyan call that day when I nailed Tanyan and it was great. Atlanta has not been bad against tight ends since that day. I think. So I still think that they could be at this. The games kind of didn't work out that way. Certain teams didn't want to go there. But I don't mind Gronk. We talked about all those receivers, and they are all in phenomenal spots. But I don't mind Gronk. Tight end is the position that I'm the least comfortable with at the moment. And that's the only thing that makes me feel like maybe I do want to spend up, if not for Kelsey, at least for an Andrews or something that I feel more confident in. Because really right now, like I don't feel comfortable with anybody except for Komet because I'm only paying $3K. I'm okay with that. Against Minnesota, bring it, sing it, don't bring it. Or going up and getting Kelsey and Andrews. And I agree with you, though. Kelsey at 8K and 8.5 on FanDuel makes it very difficult. He really does mess up your builds. You almost want to play Kelsey if you are going to play him in the flex and go double tight end and just treat him like a receiver, which is on the table. He's had 2 straight games at 30 DraftKings points. So it's on the table, probably more so on DraftKings. But yeah, so some stuff to consider. Defenses, and then we'll do our best bets, top game stacks, and we're getting the fuck out of here.
Yeah, defense, nothing's really standing out to me. I like San Fran. I don't mind the Cardinals. I don't mind the Ravens. I obviously like the Rams, but they're pricey as shit. But I will make an effort to get some of them because they could certainly just blow away the field and set you apart. Don't mind the Seahawks against Washington with Haskins. That's it, though. Like, weak position, in my opinion. Like, 49ers, 49ers, Rams, Seahawks, and Cardinals. Probably my top 4.
Yeah, I think so. The Niners are probably my favorite coming into this, even though I think the Cowboys are capable of scoring, and I do like Gallup. I also think that we do see Dalton get sacked. That offensive line's not getting any better, and I think that I think the Niners have a chance to score actual points, assuming that Dalton does throw the ball down the field. If you can reach the Rams, they're probably the safest it gets, I think, this week. But 4,500 on the defense is very fucking hard to do on a slate like this. You know, as far as saving money, cheaper defenses, I actually don't mind the Washington defense. I really don't. Now, I wished Alex Smith was playing because I would feel more confident in them, like keeping the ball away from Seattle and just trying to kill the clock more. I don't know if Haskins is capable of that as much. But I do think Washington defense is really good. I like playing good defenses when they're cheap, and they are cheap. And while Russ is Russ, I'm not going to overreact and think that Russ is back because he beat up on the New York Jets. And now he's also across the country. They have the Rams next week, potential look-ahead spot. So I actually like the Washington defense at 2,600. Boom. But it's mainly the Niners and Washington that I'm really looking at. I'll see by the time the article should be ready by tomorrow. I'll see if I come on anything else. Favorite game stacks, Paulie?
Cardinals, Eagles, Saints, Chiefs, and Houston, Colts.
I'm gonna go with the Chiefs and the Saints, number one. Also, I'm gonna fucking hop on your train, bro. I kind of like that Watson thing. It is growing on me more. Like I kind of like that. I think I'm gonna hop on that bandwagon a little bit, and then I'll go with Eagles. Cardinals. The last one. Wrap it up. Long dick style. You know, the 3 late games are pretty interesting, man. You got the Jets and Rams, right? So like you have one team that's just you expect it to be pretty somewhat one-sided as far as fantasy points. You have the Eagles, Arizona, which the total has increased 2 full points. And then, of course, you have the highest total game on the slate, Chiefs and Saints. I think I'll be on the late games quite a bit. Best bets, Paulie, you got anything?
Houston, getting 7.5. Love that. And I like the Jags to cover the 13.
I kind of like that. I'll go with Tampa Bay -6. I would love to have had it at 4, but I'll take it at -6. I think they rolled Atlanta, who's really fucking struggled against. Who's really struggled in general offensively without Julio Jones. I'm gonna go with the San Francisco 49ers. Again, would have liked to have had them at 1, but I'll take the 3. I'm pretty confident that the Niners defense gets the job done here in general. And then I think the other one was actually I think the Jags. Yeah, okay. The Jags were the other team also. I'm a Paulie on that one too. Let's go. Cover them points. Let's go. Okay. I think that's it, right? That's usually all we do. That's it. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us, Nation. Patty and Joe should be back next week. Make sure to go check out NBA. Oh, sweat alert! I did take first in the 50 cent. So, holla at your boy. You know what happened too? I was winning I think 13 total, right? And then they brought Booker and the starters back. Can you believe those bastards did that? It only cost me a couple hundred, but still, can you believe those bastards? You know, it's funny. Humble brag here. In the 50 cent, bro, I straight up dominated that thing. I took 1st, 4th, 5th, and 6th and that shit. Yeah.
Wow, that's
unfortunately the pay structure was really shitty. 4th place was $50. Yeah. 4th place, first place $500. 4th place $50. Listen, it's little light work. Give us a little extra money to throw at some football or whatever. We went light in the preseason, but it was a good way for me to end my week of preseason. And if you play NBA, it's time, man. This week it's coming. Get over there, subscribe. NFL, NBA, money season. Let's get it in. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Check us out at WiseTake.com. Paulie D for myself, the entire WiseTake Nation. As always, good luck.
Yeah.